dedicate the shiur today le'ilui nishmat, in memory of my father, my teacher, Harav Chaim Naftali ben Harav Yaakov Yitzchak Harini Kaparat Mishkavo. Today, page 55, we're going to continue our discussion of yesterday, which is the Tum'at Eretz Ha'amim. The sages put a decree, and the decree is any domain that it's outside of Eretz Israel carries ritual impurity. We explained yesterday there are two schools of thought. One is just the idea they do not want to see people outside of Israel. The energy, the environment, the air, whatever you call it, is the reason for that. But the most accepted notion was because anything outside it carries ritual impurity. It's called gusha, meaning over there when they buried the deceased, for example, it's very different than the Israel way of burying the deceased. The deceased, beside of digging the grave, putting the cement and putting a shrine around the body, they, after filling up the grave in the level of the ground, then they put some type of form, meaning they, in our language, is like almost painting a form of the body. You know where is the head, etc. And therefore later when you put a monument, it's very clear all the sign of the soil, versus outside of Eretz Israel, especially in those days, with no regulations. You see mixing of bodies, you see putting bodies under trees, under roads, and it led to many halachic questions. You see even practical halachic questions, such as one who mentioned yesterday, going with the train under a cemetery. I saw it when I was in Japan. You see it when you're traveling with the airplane, which is a well-known question that the late Rabbi Wosner asked. You go by airplane, you pass by the city of Holon, and they have cemeteries, how Kohen can do that. And further on, question involved with ritual impurity, particularly questions involved with the Kohen. So we now need to dig in that, and the nafkamina, the difference is there's someone who enter which called shidat teiva migdal. You enter with a special box that contain, it's called 40 seah, contain a certain sealing containment that you carry above ground, and hypothetically speaking, for sure it's rare, but if someone entered to that domain in such a way, it's called gusha, meaning it's make a partition between the ritual impurity and the person. It's called chotzetz bifnei hatum'ah. Those who know a little bit Israel history, it's a story about the great philanthropist, Rabbi Moshe Montefiore. You must probably heard the name Montefiore. So when he entered Yerushalayim, they wanted to take him to the Temple Mount, and they want to put him in a special, you see in the, here at the Navy games, they have a special box, what is called the fancy box that costs a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So they want to put him in that box, Shidat Teva Migdal. So the truth is, they can do it because the entire Temple Mount is considering a sacred place. But anyway, here we ask a question: if someone needs to enter to a land of nations, meaning outside of Eretz Israel, but not on a foot, he goes there by other domain, which called chest, a box, or a cabinet, is that okay or not? You see, soon it's a disputation. Furthermore, we're going to ask questions about cemeteries in general when it's come to Kohanim or other people. Cemeteries that involve trees, cemetery that revive, cemetery that was plown and changed locations, etc. How do you treat it those domain. If time allows, we'll go even to next step, which is the idea of ritual impurity for someone who's carry not only nezirut but also tzarat, meaning someone who have a combination of different components of ritual impurity. How do you count those days of Nezirut? Because if you remember in the past several days we explained that the minimum level of Nezirut is 30 days. But if during the Nezirut period someone received a leprosy or received some dermatological diseases, how do you count the previous days in conjunction with the future? We explained, if you remember, in the past questions, even with the other domain, which is the Hilchot Onen, someone who's lost his loved one, and in time in between the passing and the burial, it's called Onenut, that he is free for the mitzvot. But we ask, does that mean he's free, for example, from Sfirat HaOmer, counting the Omer, that if you stop counting the Omer for 2 days, then you basically lost the opportunity to say the bracha. Or how about Ner Chanukah, since it's a rabbinic? But in general, as you see, there are many consequences, questions that come from this discussion. So let's start. We are on page 55. לימה קטנאי, הנכנס לארץ העמים בשידה, תיבה ומגדל, רבי מטמא ורבי יוסי ברבי יהודה מטהר. Someone entered the domain of the nations, but he entered with a chest, a box, or a cabinet. Here you see a disputation. One school of thought, which is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he said that it's carry ritual impurity. Meaning, and that's the way the Rambams put it in Hilchot Tum'at Met, chapter 11, the Rambam said, one who enters the land of the nations in a chest, a box, or a cabinet, that does not come in contact with the ground, is rendered ritual impurity, as a moving tent is not considered a tent. And that's basically halacha. Follow the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi versus Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda metaher. He said that it's pure. My love, what's the disputation? Now we go back to a previous discussion of yesterday. Rabbi Savar Mishum Avira. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said that it's because the impurity with the air. What is the air? Air meaning that any place outside of Eretz Israel have the energy, the domain of ritual impurity. So even the box itself, it's considering the air of the nations. That's the way the Chazon Ish explained in Even HaEzer Kuf Mem Dalet. So the Gemara said, Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda savar mishum gusha. Earth, as we explained yesterday and a little bit today, that the structure of rituality outside of Eretz Israel treated in a very different way, and therefore the earth carries ritual impurity. The treatment of burial carries ritual impurity by itself. Now, we mentioned yesterday the Khatam Sofer that challenged that, but in general the structure is we by halacha follow Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. But here for our discussion, the Gemara rejected that suggestion and go in a different direction. They said the Kule Alma, both Rabbi Yehuda Nasi and Rabbi Yossi bar Yehuda hold the reason they put a decree is because Mishum Gusha, because as we said, outside of Israel they do not do the ritual restrictions that you have in Israel. For example, sign on the top of the grave in a manner of which you know where is the head, etc. Proper process of burial. Mar savar oel zaruk shmei oel, umar savar oel zaruk, mar savar lo shmei oel. One, Rabbi Yehuda and Nasi hold that oil zaruk, meaning a tent that it's moving, is considering, meaning that is not permanent, is not in one location, it's moving. It's considering, is not considering a tent, which is a partition for ritual impurity, versus Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda said, yes, it's considering a tent. So the Minchat Yitzchak, the late great Dayan Weiss, bring Maharsham, and the question that posted to him in his responsa is, someone need to travel, for example a Kohen need to travel a road, there are trees, and those trees cover over graves, so by locking the doors of the car, is that considering a partition, chotzetz bifnei hatum'ah, partition from ritual impurity, or not? But the truth is, the Shvut Yaakov and others said that all this decree is rabbinic. Furthermore, the late Rav Frank, who was the chief Rav of Yerushalayim, asked the next question. When we are speaking about Sukkah, we have the obligation during the festival of Sukkot to build Sukkah. Based on this discussion, can someone build Sukkah on the top of his truck, on the top of his car? Is that considering a moving tent or not a moving tent? So he said, clearly we know that if you build a sukkah on a helicopter, right? You build the inside, right? You build a sukkah. Mm-hmm. So he said, he bring the Mishnah Lamelech that said that that's oil zaruk vada'i, that's for sure as impermanent, a manner of a tent. Anyway, והתניא רבי יוסי בר רבי יהודה אומר, תיבה שהיא מלאה כלים וזרקה על פני המת. He said you have a box that is full of utensils and one throw over a corpse in a tent, so is basically overlay the corpse, and therefore טמאה, it's impure. ואם הייתה מונחת טהורה, but if it was resting on the ground, it is pure. So we see from this that Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda holds that moving tent does not insulate against tum'ah, ritual impurity. So oil zaruk, ein shmei oil, moving tent is not considering a tent, and not the way we explained earlier. Ela de kule alma mishum avira. We backed out and we said it's all because of the air, the energy issue. Umar Rabbi Yossi Bar Yehuda Savar hold the reason that they not carry ritual impurity, someone who entered a box, a chest, or a cabinet, kevan delo shchicha lo gazru berabanan. The sages not impose or do not put something in a rule and regulation that is uncommon. If you do it so rarely, you cannot put it. It's like I talked the other day with someone who dealt with the amendment of Constitution. So that person said to me that when they have this litigation discussion, they do not put rare cases, because the rare cases cannot be part of general Constitution. So said Umar, Savar, and Rebbe hold, Af al gav de lo shchicha lo gazru berabanan, even though it is uncommon, the rabbis decree tumah for this situation as well. So, in our days, the late Rav Wozner, the Brisker Rav, have a discussion. How about flying with the airplane over a cemetery? If you tell me that the moving tent is not considering a tent, then you may say that it's not an issue. But it's not so simple, because Rav Wozner have a response. For example, if you hear that there is a dead body on an airplane, if you are a Kohen, you're about to fly from JFK to Tel Aviv, for example, and you hear that they take a body there in the, what is called, the baggage, right? Mm-hmm. Domain. So, as we said here, I said it in endless times. Here we're not so much to do a practical halachot, we are more le'orer, to awaken our awareness. So you should know that it's a severe issue, and someone who have questions should not rule, should not pass in just based on this discussion, but should ask a permanent rabbi about it. Here in America we have, for example, Rabbi David Feinstein. Rabbi David Feinstein has specialties in New York, specialty in this type of questions, right? Anyway,
so,
Vehatanya.
I mean, the issue is what they're saying is then it's not, if it's not an ohel, because it's moving, so therefore you would not be subject to tumata made from the corpse that's in, because since it's not an ohel, there's no ohel tuma.
That's the Rambam.
That's what the Rambam says.
Yes.
And but that's what they claim using for the
Ravid challenged that, and there are others challenge the Rambam. Not everyone goes along.
Are they saying that it's still an ohel, that it's moving?
Correct.
Okay.
So not everyone go along with the Rambam. That's the reason why you see a very, very religious people. And I'm not saying it's bad or good, I'm just telling you the way it is. You ever see a picture of a guy that wrapped himself on an airplane?
Right. But then that's my question. So then, because this decision of whether it's an ohel, with regard to tumata made for carrying a corpse, would affect whether being in a plane flying over a cemetery protects you or not. Because if it is an ohel, if it's considered a teva essentially, and I mean it's as airtight as anything you're going to get around. I mean it's more airtight than any teva from being in a plane. I mean,
as I said earlier.
So that view would then say you're protected being in the plane.
In general, it is a problem, but you can go and challenge any kohen that needs to enter to a hospital, for example, or if he is staying in a hospital and all of a sudden informed that a floor below him there is a corpse.
Right. Right.
So again, you go the same thing. Are you going by the idea which we studied yesterday, that since the dead body ascend and descend,
right,
and the measurement of tefach that we discussed yesterday,
right,
if it's exceeded the tefach, is no limitation of both sides. How do you treat a person that is a kohen, not only in your case, but even in a hospital?
Right.
So as I said earlier, a person should ask a prominent posek before making a decision, because it's a severe cases that need each case to be discussed independently and separately.
And if I, just so I make sure I understand, if someone holds that a moving, so the plane is not an ohel because it's moving, therefore if they fly with a body, a kohen, in that case, they would hold that that's okay. They would not be tumata made because it's a moving. It's not an ohel, correct?
Because they have the isolation,
right?
Like shidat tevar migdal.
Well,
okay.
But I mean, because it's not an ohel, so there's no ohel tuma, right?
Okay.
I mean, because it's been carried.
Okay.
But based on that ruling, then, if they were flying over a cemetery, it'd be a problem because then it's not an ohel. Whereas someone who holds that it's an ohel and can't fly with a body because it's a tent. Then they would say that they're protected flying over a cemetery, right? So that would.
As we said earlier, I keep saying that.
You on one side, you're going to get it on the other.
The answer is very basic. The idea is that you have to ask a prominent posek.
No, I understand.
There is a responder from Khatam Sofer. There is a responder from Nodab Yehuda. There is so much to discuss on this, and the idea is each case should be judged separately, because it's not as simple. In general, my teacher, for example, Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, always was more stringent with that. When people ask him if it's a kohen, he always chooses not to go to the domain that is safek tuma.
Well, right, and I understand you should do whatever you can to avoid it, even if there's a question, right? So, but I guess when a posek makes this decision, how would a posek hold? Do they hold that a moving plane is?
I'll give you a small example.
Or do some hold one way and some hold the other?
Several years ago, when I was a rabbi in New Jersey, so someone took me to the late Lubavitcher Rebbe's grave. I also visited my uncle, who was the head of the Chabad Lubavitch in Russia. So I noticed some Kohanim put some type of mechitza, some partition, that for all four sides, And by notion, we mentioned the other day about Meiron, about Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, that Kivrei Tzadikim enam metameim. But since there is other kevarim there, so they put a partition around them, and that's the way they enter to daven around the Rebbe's Ohel, the Rebbe's grave. So again, as I said, most probably they have enough prominent sources to support that notion. But as I said, this is one of those domains that you need to ask a prominent posek for every single question like that.
It seems to me like they're protected even if they put a mahiksa around it.
I wish that it's so simple. There are some rabbis who hold that it is. If you put a mechitza, if you put a partition. But anyway,
Ve'atanya. You can stand outside the cemetery, outside the fence of the cemetery. How's that different?
Ve'atanya. No, but there is a notion, Gilbert, there is a notion that said that the righteous people graves do not carry ritual impurity.
But the mechitza is to protect them from the other graves, what I'm saying. And so it's as if they don't actually go into the cemetery because there's a fence between them and the other graves.
והתניא, הנכנס לארץ העמים, בשידת תיבה ומגדל טהור, we have a braita that said, if someone enter domain of the other nation, in that form, remember, box, chain, cabinet, pure, versus בקרון ובספינה ובאיס קריה, טמא, if he's in a wagon, boat, or mast ship, yes, so he's ritually impure. That's the rabbinic decree, the Rosh said, and as we said, that is very uncommon. Now they elaborate. Ve'i ba'it eima, hacha shema yotzi rosho verubo lesham. The discussion is, if here we differentiate in a different part of the body, if he may thrust his head and most of his body out of the container as he is passing over the land of the nations, so therefore, since we said by everyone is the issue of gusha, meaning the earth, so that's the idea. Tosfot said that it's only rabbinic. That's the reason why the linen was shoverable. But you should know that the ritual impurity of the land of the nation in that framework is different than the ritual impurity of a tent. In tent, it's even he put in his hand, it's enough, or any other part of the body. Versus the nation, Tosfot explained, and the Rambam said that only if it's the head, the most of the body. Anyway, so והתניא, bring a source. ורבי יוסי ברבי יהודה אומר, הנכנס לארץ העמים בשידת תיבה ומגדל טהור, עד שיוציא לשם ראשו ורובו. So this is a question that posed to many poskim in the past. When it's come to a hospital, and is the issue of limbs, issue of part of bodies, if you have a box, קופסה מחזקת 40 סאה, you have a box that contain size of 40 סאה, do you treat it as a oil zaruk, as a moving tent, that is a kli chotzetz b'fnei hatumah, it's a vessel that create a partition from ritual impurity or not? Anyway, umatchil umone. So the Mishnah said that he begins to count his interrupted terms again immediately after completing his purification from the tum'ot that we listed in the Mishnah. So there's a question that posted in some responsa. You have a groom that is a Kohen, and they said someone is about to pass, so he locked himself in the room, and then they take a box, a chest, a cabinet, and they put it in and pull him out. Is that okay? Or, as we said yesterday, if the groom is taking shower, or if the man just taking a shower, and he's a Kohen, and suddenly they inform him that he's a dead body. So what do you ask him to leave naked the house? Right? Because he immediately needs to leave. Right? So there is some advice that some rabbis said That if lechatchila, if you get a chance, you tell him, is there some emergency, you have to dress up. And after he dressed up, you tell him what's going on, right? Anyway, Amar Rav Chizda, lo shanu, ela binzirut mu'etet. You have to speak here in a concept that it's a short term of ritual impurity. And what's the short term? 30 days, right? Aval binzirut meruba. But if it's a long term, the meaning, for example, at the completion of the leprosy period, it's still 30 days for Nezirut, for raise the hair. Mislak name salkin lei, it's also count Nezirut. So for example, the Keren Orah explained, also the Meiri, said, if someone accepts upon himself a 30 days, that's the minimum amount of Nezirut. And then all of a sudden he receive, should never happen to anybody, a leprosy. Either in the middle, the beginning, and then he was healed. If you tell me that the days that he has a leprosy counted, which means that he completed his term of Nezirut in the 30 days. But if, so it means that those days that he have leprosy, it's not even count. If you remember, we talk on page 39 about robbers or forcefully someone shave his hair, versus if it was, for example, 100 days, the Nezirut, and then he received a leprosy, and then he was healed at the end of the 30 days, so he can shave at the end of the 100 days because he have already a hair growth of 70 days period from shaving for his tzarat to now. So anyway, so in short, Rav Chizda hold that the leprosy, the tumat tzarat, olim, it's count to the days of the Nezirut. The Keren Orah in general put the term, it's called kol ha'ra'ui lebila, bila me'akevet, which means if you have enough hair, that's a different story, but if you need to wait, because as you remember we said that in order to cut hair you need to have the 30 days period to have the hair growth. Anyway, Mativ Rav Shravya, מתחיל ומונה מיד, ואין מבטל בהן את הקודמים, some said ואין סותר. So they said he count immediately, and he does not disregard the preceding days. So they ask, B'mai, what exactly the Mishnah meant? Ileima bin zirut muetet. If you tell me it's short term of Nezirut, which is 30 days, so why is not annul the previous days? Kaba'ei gidul se'ar. He requires a 30 days period to have the hair growth. So if he shaved for purification from his leprosy, he must negate the early days as a practical manner to enable his hair to regrow. 55b, El alav bin zirut meruba. It's clear that the Mishnah refers to what? To a lengthy term of Nezirut. So basically, it's left over at least 30 days. That's the time for the hair to regrow. And he adds those days, metzaref yamim shaya metzora, he adds those days that he carries the leprosy. Vekatani matchil umone miyad. And that's not the way Rav Chizda explained. So the Gemara said, hu motiv la v'hu mefarek la, bin zirut bat 50 yom. So he's not gained anything. Deativ esrim, that it was already 20. V'itialda betzarat, and unfortunately you have this leprosy. Megaleach tzarato, so now you have no choice, but he shaves his body for his tzarat, and then observe 30 days of Nezirut, והדר יתיב תלתין יומי דנזיר, והאית לגידול שיער, so you have 30 days. So that's the Tosfot and Rosh said that what Rav Shavia said is lav davka, is not So the same apply if you have a Nazirut of 40 days, if you have a leprosy after 10 days. But anyways, a discussion among the Rishonim, Adam Shenitma, if person carries a ritual impurity, so is negate all the previous date or not, even in Nazirut Moetet, even in 30 days Nazirut. Because he have these 30 days, he accept upon himself. He have 10 days, and now he have a leprosy. He's going by the shaving process. And then he add the 10 days that preceding plus the 10 days of leprosy. So it means the 10 days of Nazirut left. So he cannot shave because he doesn't have the 30 days for hair the regrowth. So in one hand he gained the completion of Nazirut earlier. But if he become ritual impure, will not negate the previous days. So the question is why Rav Chisda said no. So they said here, you should know many of those questions, they left it unanswered. Mativ Rami Bar Chama. We learn early on page, we learn in upcoming page 59b, Nazir shaya tameh besafek umuchlat besafek. Nazir that have not 100% is not clear, uncertain ritual impurity from a corpse. And you have also the confirmed leper in an uncertain. So you see, if you have a total leper that healed, he need two-time shaving of his body, including head, but the separation need to be 7 days in between them. The same applies to Nazir that contaminate himself to a corpse. He needs to have two types of shaving. One is called Tiglacha Tum'ah, the shaving from ritual impurity, and one Tiglacha Tahara. But if you have here Safek Metzora, it's not clear that he's a leper, so you cannot go by this notion of shaving the same way, and therefore he cannot shave the moment that he was healed from the leprosy. 56. Ochel b'kodashim, he ate sacrificial food le'achar 60 yom, after 60 days, but not earlier, because he is not out of that predicament of being a leper until he reach the 60 days. ושותה יין ומטמא למתים לאחר 120 יום. Can drink wine, can contaminate himself to that body after 120 days. So it means, on one hand, he's not completed his Nazirut vow. So he has confirmed a leper in which his shaving will be counted for his leprosy. So you wait another 30 days to proceed the shave on the day 90. Even at that stage, he may not drink wine or counter ritual impurity from a corpse because it may be impure. ותענה עלה, במה דברים אמורים בנזירות מועטת? You have to say that that's applied for 30 days period of נזירות. אבל מסירות בת שנה, if it's 1 year, אוכל בקודשים לאחר 2 שנים, ושותה יין ומטמא למתים לאחר 4 שנים. The same חשבון, the same account, that he shave and then 1 year, because he cannot do it by ספק. ויסת כדתך סלקין ליומי, that the days of ritual impurity of a leper count for the day of Nazir, תסגלה ב3 שנים ו30 יום. You don't need the 4 years, it's enough 3 years and 3 days, because after he completed the 2 set of shaving, because he was ספק צרת, maybe a carrier leprosy, he maybe does the third tiglachat after 30 days, because the same is mima nafshach. Now it's important to know that the Chazon Ish and Even HaEzer and Kuf Mem have a discussion over this rule, because when you have this idea of Nazir, they have 2 sides of Tumah, Shnei tzaddei Tumah. One is the Rov, which is either Metzora, either you have a leprosy, or ritual impurity. So it's called Chezkat Tahara, meaning you have 2 sides that it's ritually impure, but since it's not totally conform, you're still up in the air. So Nodab Yehuda, in order to solve it, he said something very sophisticated. He said, imagine you have a court case. Reuven suing Shimon, take him to the court, right? Din Torah. You have 3 judges. 2 said Reuven is right. But one is one reason, the other judge have another reason. So here we ask a question, is Reuven right because there are 2 out of 3 say that he is right? Or you said no, he is not right. You know why? Because each of the 2 has a different reason. So therefore, since they have a different reasons, you cannot treat it. So back to our subject, the Rabbi Yehuda tried to prove that since here you have an issue of chezkatara, so the only reason that you are stringent, it's because lo leikanes letzafek tuma. You don't want to enter domain of quandary, of not clear state of ritual impurity.
Shula